What's up, Buck Doug with D&E in the garage? Today we have a cool project. Today we're going to fix Jeep up a little bit, all right? Now, over the last, not even 20 years, Jeep has done some confusing things, some things that have never really made sense to me. And today I want to set the record straight and kind of figure out what they should have done with their lines, with the names they used, with how they grew certain nameplates. It just never made sense to me. These are my shower thoughts. This is what keeps me up at night. I think we're all going to sleep a whole lot better when this conversation's done. All right, so what we're going to do is take a few of the lines that have existed over the last, not even 20 years. It's like 2002 to today, that's 17 years. So 17 years of Jeep needs to be a little bit straightened out. We got a little bit wonky, a little cattywampus, but don't worry, we're going to get her, straight, true, and level, something or another. All right, right now. All right, so the first one we're going to look at is the Cherokee line. 2001, Cherokee XJ goes away. We all know that. 2002, the KJ Liberty Cherokee comes into existence. If you don't know, all the Liberties that ever existed in North America are called Cherokees elsewhere in the country. So the Cherokee line never actually was stopped elsewhere in the world, and so for our intents and purposes, those are Cherokees. So 2001, the XJ goes away. 2002, the KJ Liberty Cherokee comes in. That's fine. That makes sense. All right. What a lot of people don't know about the XJ is that it was originally designed as a response to the 1970s gas crisis. It was supposed to be a small, fuel-efficient SUV, tiny by the day's standards. So we don't think of the XJ like that, but that's how it was originally designed, the XJ anyway. So the KJ makes sense in that vein. They made it a little bit smaller, a little bit more efficient. It makes sense. That's fine. What I want to change, though, is in 2007, when the KJ died, in our timeline, they replaced it with the KK, that very, I guess boxy is the word you'd use. It was the one that shared a platform with the Dodge Nitro. Instead of that being the 4th generation Cherokee, we're going to use the Patriot. The Patriot always should have been called a Cherokee. It's inconceivable to me that they didn't call it a Cherokee. If you look at an XJ next to a Patriot, they look so similar. The Patriot has the same proportions, same window proportions, same silhouette. It's like 10% smaller, and somebody took some 60 grit and just knocked the corners off a little bit. That's all that a Patriot is. And they gave it round headlights, which I'm a fan of. I like the front of the Patriot. I think it looks arguably better than the front of the XJ. So it makes perfect sense. You got the XJ, the natural progression is into the KJ, then the natural progression is the Patriot becomes the 4th generation Cherokee as like a XJ throwback type thing. All right, then after that, you let the Patriot live from 2007 to 2016, and then in 2016, the 2nd generation Compass, what we know as the 2nd generation Compass, becomes the 5th generation Cherokee. Now, it's important to note that in this timeline, the KL Cherokee, as we know it, that slant-eyed thing that is the Cherokee today, never exists. No love lost, I imagine. Now, this is a bad car, I'm just saying. And the 1st generation first generation Compass never exists, which is a truly amazing correction in history. That is the most hideous Jeep that has ever Jeeped anywhere on the Jeep. The one that shared the body with the Dodge Caliper, that never exists. So you've got the XJ goes into the KJ Liberty, just like in our timeline. The KJ gives way to the Patriot as the 4th generation Cherokee, and then the 5th generation Cherokee, the one that would be living today, is what we know as the 2nd generation Compass. And I'm going to explain why right now. Something that's always bothered me is the fact that the Cherokee and the Grand Cherokee exist at the same time and have nothing to do with each other, right? And the reason that anomaly exists is that they were never intended to exist at the same time. The Cherokee nameplate was supposed to go away when they introduced the Grand Cherokee in 1993, but the XJ was still selling so well that they kept it along, and now we have this thing where there's two vehicles that seem like they should be in some way related and aren't. All right, if you had product X and you had product Grand X, wouldn't you expect Grand X to be a bigger, better, in some way plus version of the normal product X? That's intuitively, that's what would make sense, but that's not the case. You have Grand Cherokees and Cherokees that have nothing to friggin' do with each other, all right? So what we do by putting the 2nd generation Compass as the 5th generation Cherokee is we fix that, because the 2nd generation Compass, the one that was released in, I believe, 2008, is almost identical to the WK2 Grand Cherokee that we have today. It's just smaller. It's got tinier features, but it's proportionally, the headlights look the same, the taillights look the same. So now finally we fixed the problem with the Cherokee Grand Cherokee anomaly. That has honestly kept me up at night. It doesn't make any friggin' sense. It's like calling something the Cherokee and then calling something the Cherokee Limited, but they have nothing to do with each other. You know what I mean? So finally we fixed that, and then the Cherokee line makes sense. The progression makes sense, because the progression they had didn't really make any sense, right? It was going along the lines of being a small commuter SUV with some off-road cred, and then they threw the KK in that didn't even have a 4-cylinder, and then they released the KL that didn't look like another Cherokee. It didn't make any sense. Now we have a line that they all look similar, and they come to a natural progression where the Grand Cherokee and the Cherokee lines are running in parallel, with one being smaller than the other, one being a little less expensive than the other. It makes friggin' sense. Now, let's move on to the Grand Cherokee line. That one's real easy to fix. It's really just a matter of semantics. We're going to consider the Grand Cherokee and the Commander the same line, because the Commander is just a 7-passenger WK. That's literally all it is. I've owned a WK and I've owned a Commander. When you get underneath, it's the exact same vehicle. They just use, wider body in the back, all that. So the first thing you got to do, don't call the WK2 the WK2. It makes no friggin' sense. All right, if you have something called, to go back to this analogy, Product X, and then you had Product X2, doesn't that imply that Product X2 was so close to Product X that it didn't even warrant a new model? That's not the case with the WK2. It is potentially, I would argue, the largest jump between models that the Grand Cherokee has ever seen. So give it its own model name. It's the WL. That's what it should have been called. You had the WJ, then you had the WK. The WK2 is the WL. It is not a refresh or a facelift of the WK. All right, the body panels are completely different. The lines are different. The whole spirit of the vehicle is different. The WK2 is a transition period between the WJ, ZJ days, when it still had some off-road potential, to the WK2, where it is a luxury SUV, hands down. Yes, they make overlands. I'm sure in another few years we're going to start to see people lifting them, but for right now, absolutely not. It is a luxury vehicle. So to call it the WK2 just does not make any sense. Call it the WL. Done. The Commander, this one it is not as much factual as it is opinion. I think the Commander should have been called the Wagoneer. Right? If you look at a Wagoneer from back in the day next to an XK Commander, that you can make the jump in your head. They look somewhat similar, and they serve similar purposes. Right? Big family vehicle. You get the big V8s in them. I don't know if they would have sold better if it was called the Wagoneer. I'm sure it would have gotten pushback. It definitely would have got pushback the way the KL Liberty got, but just, I think that would have made more sense. I never liked the name Commander. I think perhaps if they were gonna give it a name like that, maybe they should have called it the Commando as a throwback to the Jeepster Commando, but that was like a little two-door thing, so the Commander's the antithesis of the nimble two-door Commando. So I don't know. I never liked the name Commander. I do like the vehicle, the Commander. I think it should have been called the Wagoneer, Grand Wagoneer, whatever you want to call it. All right, now move on to the Wrangler line. The Cherokee line was the most satisfying to fix, because that has always bothered me. The fact that the Patriot looked like a Cherokee, the fact that the Cherokee had nothing to do with the Grand Cherokee, that was the most satisfying line to fix. The Wrangler line is the most enticing, in my opinion. There's not much we have to do to it. There's really only one thing. In, I believe it's 2004 and a half, maybe 2005, they released the first Wrangler Unlimited. It wasn't a 4-door Wrangler, it was just a TJ with a longer wheelbase, 18 inches, I believe. Someone will correct me. My personal favorite Wrangler, when I've never owned a Wrangler, when I do, I desperately hope some people call it, its official name is the Wrangler Unlimited. The abbreviation for it, some people call it the LJ for long whatever. And then some people call it the TJ-L. I'm not sure which is absolutely correct. I've seen sources arguing that each one is correct, so I'm not really sure. It doesn't matter. I'll probably call it the LJ for right now. What the LJ was, the Wrangler Unlimited was a longer version of the Wrangler, the way they used to do with the CJs. They had the CJ5, and then they had the CJ6 that was just a longer version of the CJ5. Identical, just a little longer. And then they had the CJ7, and then they had the CJ8 that was just a longer version of the CJ7. So that's what they've done with the TJ and the LJ. Now, what did they do with the CJ7 and 8? The CJ8 was the Scrambler, right? It was a little pickup. You could, when you took the top off, they had put a pickup bed back there instead of making it a standard cargo area. Make a TJ Scrambler. Just let that sink in for a minute. How awesome would an LJ Scrambler be? All right, this little pickup truck, the difference between a pickup truck and the Scrambler is the pickup truck has a separate box for the back. It's a cab and it's a bed. It's the box. That's not so with the Scrambler. CJ8 is just one long body, but when you pull it off, they've modeled the inside so that it's a little truck bed. You can put little wood sides in there. You really get some work done. My favorite U.S. president story is how Reagan had a CJ8 Scrambler that he'd take all over his little ranch in SoCal there. The beauty of this idea, first of all, it would have sold like crazy. If anybody thinks that a TJ Scrambler would not have sold, let's talk down in the squawk boxes down there. All right, we get our pickup trucks sooner because every Jeeper on the planet wants there to be a Jeep pickup option. All right, that just goes without saying. And the fact that they withheld one from us for so long is criminal. All right, so we get our pickup sooner. That makes Jeep fans happy, and they can do it in a way where they don't have to go all in. Right, they really had to go all in with the Commander, the Gladiator. It's based on a JLU, but it's very much a completely different vehicle. They already had the LJ. Just make some minor changes to it, and you could sell it as a Scrambler. People would have friggin' loved this tiny little pickup. It would have done so good. You could have bought them and used them for local deliveries and stuff. Oh man, to me that's the most enticing. All right, and the best part about the Scrambler was it got the 4-liter with the 6-speed manual behind it. Can you imagine in the mid 2000s a TJ Scrambler with the 4-liter and a 6-speed manual? That's my favorite Jeep of all time, and it's not real. This is terrible. It's not fair. So that, in my opinion, going in a tunnel, is the only thing we need to do to the Wrangler line. The rest of it all makes sense. Additionally, if you had made the TJ Scrambler, maybe we could have had JK and JL Scramblers. I don't know what that would have looked like per se. It would have been a two. So imagine a JKU, but it still only has 2 doors. I don't know that they would have really sold that, but the TJ Scrambler should have been a thing for sure. Now what we need to do is fix a hole that we created by rearranging the Cherokee line. We took out the KK Liberty, that never existed. We took out the KL Cherokee in favor of the 2nd gen Compass, and we made it so that Jeep has a very tiny little, I'm gonna call it a commuter Jeep, because let's be honest, that's what the Cherokee line went to after the XJ, and that's fine. So you've got this tiny, less expensive, very small Cherokee line, and then the next step above that is the Grand Cherokee, which the WK2 is expensive, and it's a luxury SUV. You're not getting any work done in that thing. That is a whole tier. Then you got the Wranglers. They're their own thing. You need something in the middle. You need something to compete with, like the Subaru Outback, the Ford Edge, the Honda Passport. And what I suggest we do is the KK Liberty still exists. Let that exist. Let it come into be in 2008. Call it, obviously, well, you could still call it the Liberty since we're not using that name in this timeline. You could call it the Patriot. You could call it the Compass. All of those names are unclaimed. I think likely in 2008 they would have called it something completely different. Maybe something rugged. I honestly don't know. Create that. Let it live its normal lifespan, which was 2008 to 2012, and then come out with an all-new vehicle, all right, that satisfies the hole. And this hole actually exists in the true Jeep line as well. Think about it today. We have the Compass, the Renegade, the Cherokee. They're all tiny-ish. I know the Cherokee's a little bigger and you can get a V6, but they're pretty small. I know personally none of them would work for me. I got dogs I got to carry around. I'm hauling around tools and all this crap. Too small for me. Then what's the next jump up? you can get a Wrangler or a Grand Cherokee, but they're too big and too expensive, and the Wrangler's its own thing. So you need an SUV in between there. So you let the KK Liberty exist as, we're going to call it Jeep X, and it's from 2008 to 2012. 2012 designed something all new. It's got to be smaller than the Grand Cherokee, but bigger than the Cherokee, and it needs to be inexpensive and utilitarian. Maybe even let it keep a solid rear axle. How awesome would that be? Make a little SUV for guys like me. Since that doesn't exist, that's why I could never buy a new Jeep. I love Jeep, and you see me on here bumping the Jeep brand non-stop all day, every day, several times a week. It's got to be annoying. I don't know why you tune in, but there's no Jeep for me anymore, which is a huge bummer. That's why I have to keep driving. Build me something like a WJ. Build me something like a WJ, actually more like a ZJ. Doesn't need to be super luxurious. I don't need leather seat options. It can even have steely wheels, you know? Maybe we're getting off the track of what's practical and I'm just daydreaming now, but screw it, man. These are shower thoughts to begin with. So you need something in that line, in between the Cherokee and the Grand Cherokee. There's a huge hole there in our alternative dream timeline and also in the actual timeline, in my opinion. Build something that can compete with your Ford Edge, your Honda Passport, your Hyundai Santa Fe, your, did I say Subaru Outback, whatever. The last thing we need to fix is the Renegade, and again, it's just semantics. I don't think the Renegade should have been called the Renegade. The Renegade is a really awesome trim level that they've been using for decades, right? There were CJ Renegades, Wrangler Renegades, even the KJ Liberty Cherokee had Renegade. I think it would be really awesome to keep that instead of making it a nameplate, make it a trim level. So call the Renegade whatever else. I'm not saying the Renegade isn't cool enough for that nameplate, because I like the Renegade. I think it's good that the Renegade exists on the Jeep platform. Yes, it's a Fiat 500 with a Jeep four-wheel drive system. People like to throw that in my face all the time. But who builds a four-wheel drive system better than friggin' Jeep? Duh, right? And on top of that, if you give a Jeep four-wheel drive system to anything, it is no longer what it originally was. Give Jeep a Camry, let them put a four-wheel drive system in it, that thing's no longer a Camry. I'll buy one. I'm going on the record. I'll buy a Camry if Jeep puts a four-wheel drive system in it, all right? So I love the Renegade. I think it's good it exists because the people who are buying that needed a car that small, and if they didn't buy that, what were they gonna buy? A freaking smart car or something? So, or even worse, an actual Fiat? You know, fix it again, Tony. So call it something else just so that we can keep the Renegade trim level, which I like it. It's an awesome name. It's a badass name for a trim level, you know? So let's recap our line here real quick. The Cherokee line, we're gonna have the XJ give way to the KJ Cherokee in 2002, which is gonna give way to the Patriot as the 4th generation Cherokee. Makes total sense because it looks just like it, and that's gonna give way in 2016 to the, what we know as the 2nd generation Compass. It'll be the 5th generation Cherokee, and that will finally fix the Cherokee line so that they all look similar, they make sense keeping with the same theme, and now the Grand Cherokee and the Cherokee are running parallel and they make sense as kind of like an older brother, little brother situation. After that, we've got the Grand Cherokee Commander line. WK2 gets its own platform name. WL is the most logical choice, and again, maybe just an opinion thing, but call the Commander the Wagoneer. I know you're gonna get pushback, but it looks like a Wagoneer, it makes sense, and the Commander name kind of sucks. Wrangler, very simply, build a friggin' Scrambler. I'm not gonna be able to sleep tonight thinking about owning a 6-speed manual TJ Scrambler with a oh my god, that vehicle would be so friggin' cool. God damn it. Moving on, you've got Project X, we're calling it, something to fill the gap between the Cherokee and the Grand Cherokee. This may be just me daydreaming or wishful thinking, but I think Jeep is missing something there. They're missing out on a demographic of people who need something bigger than a Cherokee, but can't afford a Grand Cherokee or don't want a Grand Cherokee. It's a luxury vehicle now. I like them, but you get it. And then finally, just give the Renegade a different name. Again, maybe just daydreaming, maybe there's no practical reason, but having a Renegade trim level, you know what, here, let's do this. Give the Renegade a different name and then use the Renegade trim level on stuff, all right? Maybe right below the Trailhawk or something, I don't know. That's it, guys. That's how we fix Jeep. Whew. I'll tell you what, man, that is a load off. I think I'll be able to sleep better. I'll lose some weight. You know, I've been carrying, I've been stress eating over how messed up the Jeep line was, but we fixed it. Honestly, if somebody wants to send this over to the marketing wanketeers at Jeep, I think that I would be a great new hire for Jeep. Honestly, with the amount of hot air I have to blow off about the brand, and honestly, clearly, we've fixed this right here. I mean, this is gold. This is a $1 billion package right here. So let me know what you think about this list, fix, rant, ironic musing. I don't know. What do you think about my line? Which of these vehicles in my new timeline would you want to own, and what would you change? By all means, let me know down there in the squawk boxes. I really think this is perfect. I don't think it's going to offend too many people because it makes friggin' sense. Does it make sense to you? It makes sense to me. Let me know down there in the squawk boxes. As always, thanks for watching. See you next time.